morning, Jim. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Rick?
Excellent. For those that are listening to this after the fact, my name is Rick Beaudry. I'm a founder of Thought Rock, and I'm talking to Jim Jackson. Jim, if you want to maybe do a quick introduction about yourself.
Yeah, I'm the founder of Blue Sky AFC Associates, and I've been working in the ITIL and ITSM field for probably about 8 or 10 years now.
Fantastic. And Jim, you recently attended the DevOps Enterprise Summit. Maybe tell us a little bit about that and what your observations about ITIL and DevOps were.
Yeah, the summit took place in June in London, and I saw it as something interesting because in my workup with ITIL 4, I had seen all the talk about DevOps and the increased integration between ITIL and DevOps. I really wanted to go to this conference and see what it was about. It was so funny because within the first half a day of the conference, I really started to feel like people were lumping ITIL into organizational structures and approaches that they were actually fighting against as followers of DevOps. So, I really had the feeling that people were blaming ITIL. And apart from that, the conference had a real buzz about DevOps. There was a lot of excitement. And one of the things that they do at the conference is they talk a lot about their success stories. And so anyways, I had this growing apprehension, but I decided to flip it. And I decided that instead of being afraid to tell anyone I was an ITIL expert, that I would lead with that. So whenever I was doing an introduction or an icebreaker in a conversation, I would say, hey, I'm Jim Jackson, and I'm an ITIL expert, but believe me, you shouldn't blame ITIL for the things that you're thinking. And
right.
We got into some good conversations when I started it that way.
Excellent. So, and from your perspective, what do they or are they blaming ITIL for?
Well, there's two main things. They blame ITIL for silos that are formed in businesses that tend to slow down and prevent effective management of IT-based services. And they also blame ITIL for the structures of control. So in particular, change management and how everything has to go to a cab to be approved. The DevOps approach, I'm not sure how familiar you are with DevOps, but it's like their approach, and their mantra is, we build it, we run it, we maintain it. So if you can picture a team doing that, you can see that does eliminate silos. And there's a lot of talk about how in organizations where DevOps is successful, that they've broken down the walls of silos. But the other thing that it says is that, they really reduce the requirements for changes to go to a cab. And I'm serious. Talking about a cab is a bad word in the DevOps approach. But some of the interesting discussions I got into, I was informing people that there's nowhere in the change management process or even in ITIL version 4, the revised practices approach, there's nowhere in the change control that says every change request must go to a cab. So there's a big misunderstanding, But those are the main things.
On execution,
Yeah.
So from your perspective, where do we go in the industry now in terms of, DevOps, ITIL? Is this the harbinger of death for ITIL? I mean, where do you see this going in terms of they cohabitate, they go in different directions, it becomes a competitive situation? What seems to be going on there?
Well, it's kind of a scenario of ITIL is dead, long live ITIL. I really think that there is a lot of opportunities for coexistence. They really need, I guess some of the issues with ITIL is that the way ITIL is documented, it can be seen as very bureaucratic. And it fits very well in organizational structures that are power-oriented or are bureaucratic. But to be honest, it fits just as well in organizations that are performance-oriented. So I really see that DevOps teams, they need a distilled version of ITIL. They need ITIL thinking in the way that they're going to build, develop, and deliver applications and services. They really need it. They shouldn't be trying to move forward without it. You can't abandon the best practice. You just can't. Yeah.
Right. And so I guess as an ITIL expert, if you had to summarize it, you're in that situation inside an organization making these decisions on direction and education and protocol. What's your advice for organizations on how to achieve the best results from both disciplines?
Well, I think that it really comes down to communication, and you can put that in a form of training. You could put it in a form of workshops. And this all fits very well with agile management structures. Remember that what agile is all about is providing value sooner, safer, happier. And that's also part of what DevOps is very focused on. In DevOps, they talk a lot about shifting left, and they talk a lot about feedback. Well, communications is so important. So when we look at elements of ITIL and we look at the ops part of DevOps, I mean, they're saying we're going to build it, we're going to run it, and we're going to maintain it. There are elements from ITIL that they need. And I don't think it comes from huge, thick books. It comes from what I like to call that distilled ITIL knowledge. And you can communicate that in various types of seminars, training, and whatever organizational structure you're in. As long as there can be communications and support for everything that's going on, it can move forward. So whether you want to look at change management, just as an example, Rick, in the DevOps world, we listen to DevOps teams' success stories, and they're talking about how they push 500 changes a year. And some of the success stories were standing there going, we're at 14,000 already this year. We're going to exceed 15,000 changes. Well, even if I was a traditional ITIL approach person, there's no way that 15,000 changes go through a cab. So anyone that thinks every change needs to go through a cab is assuming something that's not correct. As a change manager, you'd analyze things. Of those 15,000 changes, how many were really related to major feature changes or achieving the next major step of the epic that is what the customer wants? Very few of them. Many of those changes would be and should be approved by peer review, and you ensure that you've got the controls there to do it in a safe way, and you move everything forward. So there's a lot of value in ITIL still. People need to understand ITIL, and they need to then not turn their brains off. They need to pick the parts of ITIL that work in their environment and leverage them for their success.
Excellent. So continued coexistence.
Absolutely.
And not necessarily a death in either direction. Okay, that's great. Well, we really do appreciate your insight, and I'm sure viewers of this video blog will appreciate it, and hopefully we hear from you again soon. So again, thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
Very welcome.